Mr. Mayor, we are live.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I'd like to welcome everyone to the special council meeting of Wednesday, March 28th, 2023. We'd like to take a moment of reflection, please. Thank you. The Township of Oro-Medonte acknowledges that we are situated on the traditional land of the Anishinaabe people and ancestral territory of the Huron-Wendat. The Anishinaabe include the Odawa, the Ojibwe, and the Potawatomi nations, collectively known as the Three Fires Confederacy. It continues today as the home for diverse Indigenous people, including the historic Métis community in Penetang-Washing. The Anishinaabe people continue to have an enduring relationship with this land, specifically the Chippewas of Rama First Nations, the Chippewa Tri-Council, and the Williams Treaties First Nations. The Huron-Wendat Nations also continues to pay respect and protect their ancestors and heritage of this land. We honor the Indigenous history and culture that has thrived for millennia in the territory and the treaties that bind us together as partners in spirit of the shared sustainable and prosperous future. We are all treaty people. Our commitment begins with acknowledging the truth so that we can move forward together towards reconciliation. Madam Clerk, may we have a motion to adopt the agenda, please?
Moved by Lavoie, seconded by Hutchison. Be it resolved that the agenda for the special council meeting of Wednesday, March 29th, 2023 be received and adopted.
All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Madam Clerk, may we have a motion to go past 4 hours if necessary, please?
Moved by Hutchison, seconded by Young. Be it resolved that Rule 14.19A, as per the Consolidated Procedural Bylaw number 217-165, be suspended in order to allow the meeting to proceed past the 4-hour adjournment requirement if necessary.
All in favor? That's carried. Is there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Councillor Schell?
Yes, when we run into this section on grants, I need to excuse myself on the Chamber of Commerce part of it because I'm a member of the Chamber of the Commerce.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Schell. Madam Clerk, I will also be declaring a pecuniary interest under the grants as two of those organizations, a company that I own, potentially may be doing business with them over the next 2 years.
Mr. Mayor, may I ask which those of the companies?
It'll be the Coldwater Agricultural Society and the Oro-Medonte Agricultural Society.
Thank you.
Any other pecuniary interests? Oh, Mr. Dunn?
Not a pecuniary interest, Mr. Mayor, but just for Councillor Schell, we have packaged decisions in the grant portfolio based on the material that was shared with Council. The issue of the Chamber of Commerce will be a separate slide later on in the discussion. So, Councillor Schell, there will not be, as you've declared, a conflict in dealing with the grant material that would be coming before Council. It's separated out.
Thank you. I'll just wait for direction.
Okay. Okay. Madam Clerk, is there anyone from the public registered to speak on an agenda item today?
If I could just have a moment, I did have to shut my system down, so I'm pulling it up again.
Excuse me.
No, Mr. Mayor, there are no registrations for
Thank
open
you.
session.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. That'll take us to item 5A, reports of municipal officers for action. This item is a continuation of the budget presentations from the previous meetings. So, Mr. CAO, please proceed when you're ready, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I could just explain to council, anticipating walking through the rest of this afternoon in 3 tranches. The first piece of work we'll be bringing before you the summary of grants and subsidy requests. That will be up on the screen momentarily. Members of council received that and had an opportunity to look at previous year allocation as well as 23 and 24 requests. That will be the first piece of business, Mr. Mayor. When council concludes those discussions and provides direction, we'll then move to a recap on the budget by Ms. Morrow. She'll identify the refinements that have been undertaken subsequent to the deliberations and discussions with council over the last couple of weeks. Ms. Morrow will walk council through what we believe is addressing many of the items that were flagged, as well as the process to move through both 23 and 24. And then finally, Mr. Mayor, I don't know what that third bucket is, because perhaps there are other items that we've not been completely covered, and there may be some other direction forthcoming from council. We've got a rudimentary resolution, as the clerk indicated. However, specifically, Mr. Mayor, members of council, all of the slides that Ms. Morrow will go through will be the basis of, we couldn't write a 17-page resolution because we're not certain of the outcome of those subsequent deliberations. So, Mr. Mayor, with that, if you're okay, I could ask Ms. Hewitt to please bring up the grant and subsidy request budget for 23 and 24. Mr. Mayor, I know that there's going to be discussion and deliberation with direction from council. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn.
Don, is it possible to make that just a little larger on the screen? I'm not certain.
Just so the public knows, Mr. Bard is delayed a little, but will be joining the meeting hopefully within the next 10 minutes.
So, Mr. Mayor, the first item on your grant and subsidy request summary is the Barrie area physician recruitment with a request for 14.5, both for 23 and 24.
Any council member want to open the discussions on this? Deputy Mayor Lavoie.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and through you to the rest of council and to staff. I think that it's an appropriate endeavor and a very important endeavor for the community to seek whatever additional medical services that it can find, and to the extent that the Barrie area physicians are undertaking to assist with those endeavors, I would propose that we be relatively close to what their asking amount is, in order that we can promote better medical services in the community. I understand they are seeking a number of general family practitioners as well as specialists, and I think that from both of the physician recruitment areas, both from Orillia and Barrie, that it addresses, I think, one of the issues of the budget, which is to respond to the needs of our community. And therefore, I'd recommend that we be somewhere at the high end, or $9,000 or $10,000 on that particular line item for the 2 years. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Deputy Mayor. Anyone else care to comment at this time? Councillor Hutchinson.
Thank you, Mayor Greenlaw, through you. I would agree, I think as well, with the impact that COVID has had on physicians and retention of physicians over the last few years. It was very obvious from both of the physician recruitment presentations that there's quite a desperate need in both Barrie and Orillia. So perhaps, and the request is fairly large from what's been approved in the past, but I think we need to give some consideration to increasing what we've improved in the past in order to help them. So perhaps we can get a little bit creative with the numbers between the two and look to be able to provide them more than we have in the past.
Thank you. Councillor Clark?
Thank you, through you to the floor. I think I agree in large part with both Councillor Lavoie and Councillor Hutchison. I think as we've all been made aware through various media posts in the past several months, there is a healthcare crisis, and part of that is the lack of primary care physicians. And I think all levels of government need to be able to provide support for those. Obviously the province and the federal being the main two, but I think in this area it's a spot where we at the municipal level can help facilitate the increased requirement of medical services.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Schell?
Yes, thank you. I agree with everybody, what you've all said, and I'm sure the public would agree as well. So if there's anything we can increase it by, I'd like to see us do what we can. Thank you.
Councillor Young?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Greenlaw. I agree with what has been said so far. I know they're attempting to get at least 3 physicians by June of this year, having recently attended the Chamber of Commerce in Orillia there. And I agree that however we can assist this group of people attempting to recruit physicians and specialists for the area, I agree that certainly something should be allotted or granted, that number to be finalized by, I guess, as this group. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. No, I think all great comments, and I think we all realize there is a health crisis, especially with doctors within not just Simcoe County, but within Ontario. So we definitely want to, I would, if I was to give a suggestion, if we upped it from the 4,000 that was given last term, would per year, would 9,000 be adequate? Deputy Mayor Lavoie?
It would be, I believe, in my eyes. I would also recommend that we perhaps also jump down at in the same conversation, if that wasn't the plan or the same discussion, to item G, and really contemplate the 2 asks at the same time. And I think what was presented to us as well was that there seemed to be a lessening interest in graduate physicians in entering family care, and they tend to be more inclined to the specialties for their own reasons. And I think Councillor Hutchison may have pointed to a particularly salient one, which is the recent pandemic. So again, I would suggest we look at probably a combined amount of about 16,000, 9, let's say, for the Barrie area, and 7 or so for Orillia. So those would be my further comments on that subject. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm fine with doing that. So are we saying 7,000 for Orillia and 9,000 for Barrie? Is that what? Is there anyone who has any? And it's not to pick one over the other. It's just that we do likely have more attendance into the Barrie hospital than we do into the Orillia. But I think it's a win for both, that we've increased it, significantly. I know it's not what everything, but we also have to be respectful and conservative within our budget. Deputy Mayor Lavoie?
Yeah, I think it's fair to also mention that both recruitment offerings or requests rather were also different initially. So based in proportion to the asks, I think the two amounts are reflective of that. Thank you.
Councillor Clark?
To that point, for Barrie, it's a 62% fulfillment of their ask, and for Aurelia, it's a 63.64% fulfillment of their ask. So from a proportionality of their request, they're very similar.
Thank you for the math exercise. That was great. It's appreciated. It saves me. Yes, he is. Okay, so could I have somebody, sorry, Mr. Dunn?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. For clarity, what I heard was 9 and 7 for 23 and 24.
Correct.
From a staff perspective, there'd just be one other question, Mr. Mayor. Will this be a permanent adjustment to the base allocation as we prepare a summary for 25-26? And I think that would be something Ms. Morrow would need to understand, not only coming out of today, but in preparation for 25-26. Or was it intended as a one-time injection?
I think how, and please, council members chime, how we're approaching this is we've just come out of COVID. We're finally out of COVID fully. We want to support the asks that are before us now as best as we can. So for the next 2 years, we will reassess it and readdress it at that time. But this is basically, we're laying 2 years out that this is where our support is. We're going to try and increase where we can in order to get everyone back as far along the road as possible within the next 2 years.
Thank you for that clarification, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so let's go down to item B, Born to Read with the Aurelia Public Library. And just to give a little background on this, because I did sit on the library board last term, and it's actually, it's a very small ask, but it's neat thing. So when people, when babies are born at the Soldier Memorial Hospital, the library puts a package together with some children books and stuff to help promote and educate and encourage reading at the very start of life. So I think it's a great program. They've had a lot of positive feedback and success with it. I think the ask is very small, but I would say, you know, that we give $400 is what I would suggest, $400 a year for the next 2 years. Councillor Clark?
I agree. I think it's a great initiative and something that we need to collectively as a society put resources towards, the encouragement of literacy at all levels. So I would be in support of $400 per year.
Councillor Young?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Greenlaw. I thought Councillor Clark was going to suggest one of those be a chartered accountant book, but any event, I agree that 400's fair and granted.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so Madam Clerk, if you can earmark the Born to Read request for 400 over the next 2 years, please. And we will skip down now to item F, Mariposa House Hospice. I'm going to ask CAO Dunn to speak to this, because he can give you the background on this, because last council we committed $1,200, $500 for 4 years. That term is now up and completed. And would you like to take it from there, CAO Dunn?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just from a background perspective, the chair of Mariposa House Hospice first presented a request to the previous council, Dr. Cy Lowry, Council made a determination 4 years ago to support 2 years at 12.5. Dr. Lowry came back with additional clarification, and it was endorsed for another 2 years. So the overall ask was supposed to be for a 4-year period, and there's an additional ask over and above that, as you see, for 2023 and 2024.
So I don't know how many people have had any experiences with hospice, but can't say enough about the organization. And, you know, not that we ever want to leave, but it is definitely 5-star in the passion and treatment that people get in their last days is phenomenal. So I look forward to having comment from members of council as to how we should handle this. Councillor Schell.
Yes, what's the bed capacity? Do we know?
Of the Aurelia Hospice, I don't.
I think that could be a determining factor on how much we contribute. I think the one in Barrie only has about 6 or 8. Just throwing it out on the floor. I know it's important. I've been there with family, so I know what it's all about.
5 beds is, I believe, what the Aurelia location has. So, like I would say, this is something that you know, I know Councillor McPherson spent his last days in the hospice, and they were unbelievably great. But so I would say if we can, for the next 2 years, provide, you know, 6,000 to 6,500 or 600, and we'll split it in half and do 6,250 for the next 2 years, and then we can reassess it at that time. Councillor Young.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. That's in addition to, as I understand it, from CAO Dunn. Is that correct?
To be clear, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Young, the commitment was 12.5, and it was clarified, Councillor Young, midway through the last term of council, 12.5 each year. So there's nothing on the table right now. Okay. What Mayor Greenlaw indicated was 6,250, which would be 50% of the ask for 2023 and 2024.
Right, thank you.
So we have fulfilled our initial commitment. This is an above and beyond, and I think it would be, I think it's money well spent. That's just a personal opinion on my behalf, but Deputy Mayor Lavoie.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think it's probably reasonable to take the annual request and split it in 2 over the next 2 years at least, and you know, it's reasonable, and perhaps you know, next year when we're contemplating the budget, we can review it at that time, but hold at this 50% number for the present year and the next year, and then review it when we do the budget reconciliation at the end of the year, because you know, it is after all a budget, and we don't know how much of what we are going to propose we will spend. So thank you very much, and those are my comments.
Okay. Councillor Young.
Yeah, I agree with you, Mayor Greenlaw. However we can support these people, not just talking about the patients there or end-of-life people or patients there, but it's the staff there that I'm going to assume some of this money goes towards staff, which is got to be extremely hard on them, and perhaps hard to recruit people given what goes on there. So I fully support what you've suggested, and Deputy Mayor Lavoie as well.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so Madam Clerk, we'll earmark that for 6,250 for the next 2 years, and then we can reassess it at that time. And then Oro Station Community Hall, it's a 3,000, and this is something that's gone on for some time. It's higher than the Rugby Community Hall because of the water and the rink that's there. So I would say that, you know, if everyone's in favor of supporting, continuing that support. Okay, so Madam Clerk, continue with the support of Oro Station Community Hall, $3,000. And then the Rugby Community Hall is been an annual $2,500. And if anyone's in opposition to that, if not, then I'll take it everyone's in favor of continuing with that support. Okay, so now we will go, let me go back up, the Horticultural Society, $2,000, and they do a lot of work also around here with our gardens at the township office and stuff. Are we all in favor of continuing that support? And then the Copeland Forest and Friends, their ask is for $750, and I'm fine with that. Is anyone opposed to that $750 request? No. Okay. Now I'm going to slip down. Is it okay if I slip down, because it's all being passed under one, to the subsidies at this point? Is that okay, Madam Clerk? Okay, so Oro Horticultural Society, that's the subsidy part is for the hall rentals for their meetings at the arena that they have. And is everybody in support of that? Councillor Young?
Yeah, just a question, how many people are involved, or how many members do they have for such a large hall? Sorry, do we know how many members they have?
Just 1 second. Mr. Benz, would you be able to I'm going to say I think the number's 206. Councillor Hutchison.
Through you, Mayor Greenlaw, just for clarification, so this is the use of the arena?
The hall above the arena.
The hall
correct.
above the arena, which is really an in-kind
Correct.
situation, but we record it as a financial contribution. So there's really no money that changes hands here.
Correct.
Okay, just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Okay. So the ask is $2,800. We're all in favor. Well, let me break it down just so it's $2,475 in 2023 and $28 in 2024, and that I believe is from the assumption that the rates will go up over time. Okay. Okay, so the Images Thanksgiving Studio Tour, and that's the same thing. That is a hall rental in kind to help display a number of local artists. So no one's opposed to that. Councillor Young?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Just what hall is that? Would they be renting same thing, the arena, or is it?
Is that the Edie Hall, Mr. Benz, or the Jared?
Jared Hall.
Jared Hall. Okay. Okay. So at this time, I'm going to hand the chair over to Councillor Lavoie to cover off there's two other, item C and item J.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. For item C, we have a request for $500 and a traditional grant of $500 over the past couple of years, at least. Is there any commentary on the $500 amount on behalf of the Coldwater and District Agricultural Society? Councillor Schell.
Yes, I'm very fond of Coldwater, even though they're not in our township, and I respect their request, and I wish we could give it to them.
Okay. Any further comment? Oh, Councillor Young?
Yeah, thank you. I just, in the lines, says approval amount $5,000. Is it an error, or I've looked at all the other ones and they seem to be consistent, except for that one.
Through
can
you,
we have a-
Mayor Greenlaw, I believe that is a typo. It has been historically 500.
Well, thank you very much, Councillor Young. The decimal place is a very important thing, as I'm sure Councillor Clark will attest. Yes, Councillor Clark?
I think part of our heritage here in Oro-Medonte is our rural agricultural heritage. It's really important to us. And part of that culture is helping out our neighbors. And in this situation, you know, Coldwater is our neighbor, and we've shared this, and there are a number of residents from Oro-Medonte who attend the fair, and likewise, I'm sure there's a number of residents from Coldwater who attend our fair. So I think, you know, I fully support this.
Here, here. Thank you very much. That's a very excellent sentiment, Councillor Clark, and I have knowledge of people who participate in the arts and crafts there as well. So I think we should earmark that for the $500 request for both years, and we'll proceed to the subsidy for the Oro Agricultural Society, which is an $840 ask this year and $900 next year. Also, I believe, for the Guthrie Arena in kind. Can I ask Mr. Binns if you could comment?
Through you, Deputy, that is correct. It is in kind for their meeting space.
Okay, thank you very much. Any commentary? I think we'll rely on Councillor Clark's earlier comment with regard to the support of our agricultural community, which is very important and special to us, and part of our heritage. So thank you very much. With that, I'll pass the. Sorry,
Deputy, excuse me, sir.
Yes.
Did you deal with the one in the first block of J, the ask for 2,500 and 2,500?
I did not. Thank you very much, CEO Dunn. Any comments on the? Yes, Councillor Hutchison.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Lavoie. I'm just looking at the numbers from the previous year, and in 2022 and 2021, the request from the Agricultural Society was for $1,500, and it was approved for $500. And I see that this year the request has moved to $2,500. So, you know, I'm not sure if we want to support the entire request, but perhaps we could look at certainly doing more than 500 as in the previous year.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other commentary? Oh, yes. Councillor Clark.
Through you, Deputy Mayor, to the floor. As I earlier communicated, I think agriculture is a huge part of our society. I understand the concerns of Councillor Hutchison, and I would be in favor of, say, $1,500 for the next 2 years rather than the full $2,500.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Clark. Any further comment? Okay, so I think we will earmark the society for the amount that Councillor Clark has suggested, and thank you very much, and I'll turn the chair back to Mayor Greenlaw.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Lavoie. Okay, so I believe that covers off all the grants and subsidies. CAO done.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Hewitt, you took down the spreadsheet just for council. Certainly there's concurrence on all of those allocations. Donna, there's a differential between the budget allocation of 24 and what is being approved for 23 and 24. I just wanted to make sure, Mr. Mayor, we understood what that spread was. And you were very clear it is a one-time adjustment for both 23 and 24. So it's 37,232 and 37,557 over 23 and 24. And Mr. Mayor, there's a mechanism for one-time allocation. We have a suggestion, Mr. Mayor, before you endorse this part of it, and Ms. Morrow would draw one time to balance that spread from the budget contingency reserve to be able to provide those one-time additional injections.
Yes, that is understood, and we do. I believe we do. That's what we'll be voting on to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And as has been communicated maybe a couple of times now, the reason why we feel this is important is we are getting out of COVID now. We're finally hopefully clear of it, not going back into it. And a lot of these organizations have either been shut down from operating, such as the fairs. Also, the community halls haven't had rentals, but they've continued on. So I think it's a good time to try and help them set them up to be prosperous for many years ahead. So, okay, so do we have a motion for that, Madam Clerk? At this time, or we're gonna...
I was just trying to draw clarity. Okay. Council knows when you make a determination, it's based on those deliberations and what Ms. Hewitt has in the spreadsheet, and the clerk knows that it is one-time fund. All of the above, Mr. Mayor.
And there is no motion for it.
It'll be encompassed.
Be part of the budget.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
So, Mr. Mayor, Ms. Hewitt is drawing up a short recap presentation that Ms. Morrow will now march council through. We believe from a staff perspective that we have captured the deliberations and discussions over the last couple of weeks. And if I could turn it over to Nellie now to walk council through the recap and some refinements on the operating and capital.
Well, first, Nellie, we'd like to welcome you to the chamber again and thank you for the long hours you've been putting in trying to get this piece together. I know this council's had a lot of questions, but I appreciate your willingness to work to answer them and bring clarity, because I think it'll definitely help us out with the best end result.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And through you, this is a quick recap. Donna's kindly going to do the slides for me. So you can go to the first slide. So based on council's deliberation over the last couple of weeks and our discussions as staff, we have refined the budget, and this is a presentation to show you how we've refined our budget, both capital and operating. Many of the capital budget refinements are contingent upon staff providing additional information, analysis, and cost benefit, as I will explain as we go through the following presentation. Of course, prior to proceeding with the capital projects in 2024, we will be providing that additional information. So if you could go to the next slide, please, Donna. So road rehabilitation projects. As you know, staff recommended a allocation of 1.6 million specifically to be funded for rehabilitation projects on debt financing. To minimize additional debt, we as staff have an alternative source of funding that we're proposing to you to combine the Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund, OMPF, and the Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund, OCIF, as well as, if needed, other township reserves to fund those projects. Next slide, please, Donna. One of the items that we also looked at was the Oro-Medonte Fire and Emergency Service Rescue Boat. Oh, sorry, I think I've got my slides mixed up. Aha, sorry about that. So the expansion to the Station 3, known as headquarters at Horseshoe Valley, we have in our budget 1.2 million, which is currently budgeted and funded through development charges. What staff is proposing is that we bring to council an updated design and construction plan and options to council to consider regarding the potential of the disposition of Oro-Medonte Fire and Emergency Service surplus facilities prior to proceeding with the project in 2024. Next slide, please, Donna. Just gotta make sure I'm in order. So here we are with the rescue boat. 65,000 was currently budgeted in the 2024 budget, which was going to be again funded through development charge reserves. Staff is recommending acquiring the boat, although preceding a joint report from Fire Chief and Aurelia OPP Dispatch, which should be coming to council in 2023 before moving forward. This report should include some detailed information regarding waterway enforcement and rescue services. Oh, sorry, excuse me, Aurelia OPP Detachment Commander. Next slide, Donna. The Oro-Medonte Fire and Emergency Services digital signage was included in our budget for 2024 at 60,000 and was going to be funded through Facility Replacement Reserve. Staff will provide council with additional information in 2023, including detailed costing and benefits to the community of implementing a digital sign. Next slide, please, Donna. The township telephone system. 100,000 is currently budgeted in 2024 and budgeted through or funded through our equipment reserves. Staff are recommending providing council with additional information, including a full scope of the project later in 2023 prior to proceeding with the project in 24. Next slide, Donna. We are recommending that some of our, in particular, the Heritage Committee projects that were budgeted for 2023 and 4, valued at 29,000, which were originally funded through facility maintenance reserves, to be deferred. Staff is recommending deferring of these capital projects pending additional research regarding potentially community support and external grants to assist with covering costs. That would be our refinements related to our capital projects. I'm just going to go quickly through our suggested refinements for our operating projects now. So the first one up is legal costs. Due to trends of, as you know, we discussed this, escalating legal costs both in general litigation and Ontario Land Tribunal matters, staff had recommended increasing the overall budget and additionally allocating 200,000 to legal contingency reserves. We refined this budget to include the following adjustments and final budget or proposed budget. Ontario Land Tribunal matters, we've budgeted 100,000. General township litigation, we've budgeted 100,000. And legal contingency reserve, 200,000. Next slide. Environmental initiatives. The township supports environmental initiatives. We have the Nottawasaga Valley Conservation Authorities, Lake Simcoe Regional Conservation Authorities, and Severn Sound Environmental Association. Currently, year over year, the budget is increasing by 11,181. This is based on the presentations provided by these associations and conservations. Within each budget presentation, it was also identified that further analysis would need to be presented as the implications of Bill 23 to the municipality regarding what that will impact our core service delivery, which should come to council in 23-24. Next slide.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Schell, this is the item that you declared on.
So this would be the Oro-Medonte Chamber of Commerce request for in-kind support. And initially, they had requested that we support them in kind by approximately $7,500 for the use of Oro-Medonte Community Center to host a farmers market and job fair. We have been asked to reduce that in-kind support to $1,500 to solely host the job fair at the Oro-Medonte Community Center. Next slide. Fleet and equipment. Wow, this has gone fast. Fleet and equipment. The township currently follows a fleet replacement schedule, which we use life cycle to determine the fleet replacement, which is funded by our equipment and vehicle reserves. We did provide council with a capital budget reserve schedule, which included the fleet and equipment reserves. As part of our procurement policy and tender process, new and replacement fleet and equipment will be presented to council for consideration throughout 23 and 24. The capital budget presentation also included acquisition of new fleet and equipment. The tender award presented during March 22nd, 2023 council meeting for a tandem truck is pending budget ratification. The budget presentation included a fleet review, which will be used to facilitate and development of a business case, as well as a comprehensive fleet management policy, which will include the consideration for township mechanics versus third-party mechanics pertaining to the township's fleet maintenance. Sorry, next slide then. There, Donna, and this is the final slide, which basically through all the refinements and deliberations, the proposed 2023 multi-year budget is proposed to be inclusive of 4.5% tax increase, which reflects an additional $202.31 in 2023 on a residential home assessed at $500,000. The proposed 4.5 overall increase includes the County of Simcoe component, the school board's component, as well as the township's portion. I just want to highlight that the township's share is allocated between 5% for operating expenditures and 1.5% for infrastructure expenditures. And I also want to comment that the proposed tax increase falls below the current Conference of Canada 5.2% rate of inflation. And that's the end of my presentation. If you have any questions, please let me know.
Thank you, Ms. Morrow. Yes, Mr. Dunn, please go ahead.
I was going to have a suggestion, Mr. Mayor, if you wanted to go back to the beginning and just pound through if there is concurrence or concern, unless everybody's comfortable with making a determination now. I didn't think it would be the latter.
No, I think it would be, Council, I think it would be most beneficial if we go through each item in sequence. That way it's not that we miss a slide.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
So Donna has presented the first slide that I presented to you. If you have any questions, let me know.
Councillor or Deputy Mayor Lavoie.
Yeah, thank you very much. Just, I think, a point of clarification for those people who are watching. I think the understanding here is that the council, staff is recommending to council that we proceed with the additional $1.6 million in road rehabilitation. However, it's just a matter in which the rehabilitation will be funded. And it will not be funded through a debt instrument in this case, but through cash flow income from the Ontario government and from our own reserves for that purpose. CAO Dunn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to the deputy. And like the previous discussions, Mr. Mayor, members of council, it's proposed this 1.6 funded through those funding tools. It's a one-time injection of additional capital to be able to deal with road rehabilitation.
Excellent points, and thank you for the clarity. Councillor Hutchison.
Thank you, Mayor Greenlaw, through you. I agree with this, and I thank the staff for coming up with this. Given the interest rate environment we're in currently, it's good fiscal policy, I believe, in my experience, in looking at not creating more debt at this time, given the rates. So this is a great way to overcome that. Thank you. Thank you.
Councillor Clark.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the floor, and possibly to you, CFO Morrow, CAO Morrow. If I'm not mistaken, this saved interest costs of approximately $700,000 over the next 10 years.
Yes, that is, sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, you are correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments on this slide? Okay, thank you. Please proceed to, sorry, my apologies. Go. Yes, Mr. Clark.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this is more for members of council. The previous strategy, I think, engaged by the township in regards to the Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund, with the threat of that funding being withheld in the future. We're utilizing some of that funding now, as Councillor Hutchinson said, to avoid the exorbitant interest rate costs right now. This could have an impact down the road. We don't know what that impact could be, as long as we continue to get that funding. And as we did get that funding for 2023, and it was actually an increase when there was a potential for a decrease. So we do have these funds, and it's our prerogative to be using those rather than debt at this point in time. So I think that makes sense.
Yes, yes, Nellie.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to add to that part of our base budget was to continue to actually fund through the OSIF. It was 25% in 2023, but it will still go up to 50% in 2024 to be utilized for capital work. Also, the Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund, we recently received communication of what our funding would be for 2023, which is approximately $500,000 more than what we anticipated we were going to be receiving. And that is what's assisting in this funding for the road rehabilitation projects.
Thank you. Well, I think some well thought out strategies in order to have optimum impact with minimizing the debt load coming onto us. So thank you. Any other questions on this slide? Seeing none, can we move to the next slide, please? Okay. Any comments on this in regards to CAO Dunn?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to ensure the dots are absolutely connected. The latter part of that summary identifies coming back to council the latter part of this year. Also, not just an updated design and construction plan, but also a recommendation with respect for council's consideration on should there be surplus facilities. So that would be before council, not necessarily as a funding mechanism, as Ms. Morrow indicated, is DC funded.
Perfect. Councillor Young.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Perhaps for those watching, you could explain what the disposition of Oro-Medonte Fire and Emergency Services surplus facilities are, what the actual surplus facilities are.
Well, there will we'll have 3 fire stations that would be considered surplus when the East Oro station opens up. So there'd be Hawkstone, there'd be Rugby, and there'd be the Shanty Bay station. Would you like to add to that,
If I could, Mr. Mayor, that's exactly correct, Mr. Mayor. Potentially, there are 3 facilities. Staff have not done one evaluation of those properties. More importantly, this council has heard about long-term staffing considerations. All or some of those assets may be declared surplus. That would be in the report that would come to council for your consideration. So it's just drawing to council's attention that there'd be updated documentation with the design and construction plan and a report regarding valuation and the potential consideration by council for declaring surplus and disposing of surplus assets.
Thank you. Any further questions on this slide? Deputy Mayor Lavoie.
Yeah, I think it's important just to comment or illustrate that our services with regard to fire response and that type of in the case of an emergency is not going to be impeded. And you know, what we're doing here is attempting to balance the ongoing increase in our fire service capability and looking at also all of the assets that the township does have, and dovetailing together the disposal of the assets that we have in concert with the spending of money, capital monies, as we develop the future of the township. So that's just my comment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Lavoie. Councillor Young, did you have a comment?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Just curious, as I'm sure other people they're watching this council meeting, if in fact those surplus facilities are sold, where would that money go to?
Mr. Mayor, should council determine an asset is surplus, there's a process that we go through for the disposition of that. Any funds that would be received would go into a reserve allocation for our facilities and equipment. As I indicated, that particular project that we were speaking about was development charge funded. This would be a replenishment of facility reserves.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the floor and staff. This fire headquarters in Horseshoe Valley will be servicing, I believe, the Craighurst additional developments, and that's where primarily part of the reason we can use DC funding in order to facilitate this expansion.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Clark, the Fire Master Plan did identify that. That's not only in the Fire Master Plan, but the development charge study, and I know Ms. Morrow is looking at an updated development charge study later this year.
Thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none, could we move to the next slide, please? Any questions on this slide or any comments? CEO Dunn?
Mr. Mayor, if I could, certainly through deliberations with council, there was interest in providing rescue support across the municipality. There was also a desire to have better understanding of the overlap between the enforcement responsibilities of the OPP. I think this is a really good solution for Chief Murray, and working with Inspector Yateman, having a report back to council, clearly identifying those areas of responsibility and making sure that that's before you before the end of the year, so that during the reconciliation, the recalibration exercise, council can make a determination whether there's a green light on the initiative. It is identified for 24. And it is, again, through development charge funding.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dunn. And Councillor Hutchinson, would you like to comment on that? I mean, it's up to you, or I know CEO Dunn covered it off, but you actually were the one that reached out to Mr. Yateman about this, and so.
Thank you, Mayor Greenlaw, for the opportunity. It was a really terrific conversation, actually, that I had with Inspector Yateman, and he was able to provide me a lot of information as to how the OPP detachment in Aurelia services the water area, not only just in front of Oro-Medonte on Lake Simcoe, but Bass Lake and the other areas as well, and the fact that they're building a very robust program going forward in this year, which was hampered by COVID in the previous 2 years. So I think it's a really great opportunity to partner our fire department with the OPP detachment to work together to come for the best and most appropriate safety solution for our waters.
Thank you, well said, and I appreciate you reaching out to Mr. Yateman in order to initiate that conversation, because as we all know, partnerships tend to be very beneficial, not just economically, but also in what they provide. Any other comments on this slide? Councillor Schell?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mayor Greenlaw, to the floor. Just more of a statement than anything. We have the largest shoreline of any township in on Lake Simcoe. Oro-Medonte does. I'm just curious where this boat's going to sit when along that shoreline. I'm sure some thought has been put into that. I haven't heard anything.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, to Councillor Schell, certainly I believe that would be one of the outcomes of a recommendation, a joint recommendation regarding servicing. I think I preempted Councillor Hutchinson. I apologize, because I think you were going to say the same thing. Obviously, it will be an outcome from that detailed work with the detachment commander.
Perfect, thank you. Any other questions or comments on this matter? Seeing none, can we please move to the next slide? Okay, so any comments on this item? Seeing none? Well, that's good. Okay, so township telephone system. Any comments on this? I appreciate this, and I think, you know, to have a full scope of the project and reconsider for 2024 would be definitely advantageous. And CEO Dunn, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Absolutely, the full scope. There was an awful lot of commentary, both from a deliberation perspective as well as individual comments regarding potential technology solutions as well. And certainly Ms. Hewitt and Mr. Daynard would be working at preparing something for the latter part of 23 to be able to lay that out and get feedback from council and direction from council prior to proceeding with the project in 24.
Councillor Clark.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the floor, just to add a comment. I think having experienced this myself, it can be very frustrating from a resident perspective if you're calling on the phone to a member of staff and the call cuts out. It can be very frustrating. You know, $100,000 is very expensive, but at the same time, from a customer service perspective, it certainly hinders our ability to provide great customer service from a staff perspective.
Thank you. Okay. Any further comments? Okay. Next slide.
Next slide, Donna, please. Yes, Mr. Mayor, the deferred projects. It's all pending an opportunity to research the potential of external grants to assist with covering the costs.
Councillor Hutchinson.
Thank you, Mayor Greenlaw, through you to the floor. This 29,000 was earmarked. Was it mostly just for the repair and replacement of cairn signs and monuments? Is it also incorporating the fact that we have to beef up our heritage designations over the next 2 years, given the restrictions that Bill 23 is putting on us on those declarations? Or is this more the maintenance work on what's specified here on the slide?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. This 29,000 is actually 6,000 that was allotted to just the actual cemetery signs themselves, and the rest was meant for the monuments. Both were suggested by the Heritage Committee to be looked at. I'm going to pass it on to Sean here, and he has a little more information about the latter.
Through to Councillor Hutchison, just to be clear, so there was 3 signs for township cemeteries. There's 12,000 carry forward from last year plus 6,000 net new. And then the cairns and monuments, there was 17,000 that was a carry forward from last year. And that's really just to do a review of the condition, potentially some parging and waterproofing. Just to put that into perspective, we have a significant number of cairns, many of which are on private property, and the cost to rebuild just one of those would exceed that 17,000. They were built by the community back in the day, which is why we've suggested the approach that we've suggested, that it should really be a community initiative to look at that restoration. And the operating budget for heritage does include provisions for the heritage designations and consulting to bring those before council.
Supplementary?
Well, I was just going to say thank you for clarifying that. I think for myself and also members of the public, it's kind of important. And I think the other side of this, unfortunately, is people with a skill set to actually repair these stone cairns are difficult to find. And it would be lovely if we had someone within our community who had those skills who could help us out. Thank you.
Mr. Binns, I don't know if you can answer. So I just want to be clear. So will this hinder the designation process? If because I know they have a lot of work within the next 2 years to get complete with their designation. Like it's exponentially the number that they need to get approved. So I'm just wondering, will this affect that at all, or no?
Yeah, Mayor Greenlaw, 2 completely separate projects. These are projects specifically to those cairns and monuments and signs. The designation component is something completely separate. And as I stated, there are provisions in the operating budget to be able to address consulting. To what degree, it depends really. It is quite variable in terms of the number of properties that the Heritage Committee would look at, but there was an increase, I think, on the operating budget to deal with some additional consulting to deal with the designation. Certainly that's been compounded by the recent bill.
Okay, perfect, thank you. CAO Dunn?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Whitlib, if Derek could provide just some commentary on that last piece. Mr. Mayor, Derek having just concluded a committee meeting early this week. Mr. Whitlib, any more clarity, please, Derek?
Thank you, Robin. Through Mayor Greenlaw to council. There is a small component in the operating budget. However, the Heritage Committee, in terms of the research working towards designation, the Heritage Committee.
Derek, you just went mute.
Sorry about that. It muted itself. The Heritage Committee is prepared to undertake that research work themselves. The scope of projects would exceed the amount in the operating budget if, for example, the township were to retain a heritage consultant to undertake the heritage report. So it will be a DIY exercise. Heritage reports do not, while they require a skill set, and person power to do the research, and there are certainly criteria set out within the legislation in terms of what qualifies for heritage designation. They do not require an individual that is licensed or registered or qualified in a specific way. So it will be work that the committee members will be collaboratively undertaking themselves.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. CAO Dunn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Derek, if you could please, and what you just framed, Derek, that would come back in the form of an update from the committee to council to apprise them of going through that process as well, Derek.
That's correct. So again, through the mayor to council, it would come back in two ways. One, as part of the Heritage Committee's overall work plan for their term, and then individually, as the committee makes recommendations on projects for designations, it would be reporting back and seeking direction from council on a regular basis.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Councillor Young.
Yeah, I just want to comment further to the councillor's, Councillor Hutchison's comment on perhaps the difficulty getting a restoration mason. I can tell you my old farmhouse is 135 years old, and it had a stone foundation, a field stone foundation, and I can tell you when I started looking, there's many area restoration masons in the area, and I don't think there'd be a problem. And once a tender went out to get one, that's just my own experience. I can tell you that. Can I just come back to one comment in a previous screen that Councillor Clark made, if I may?
Yep, sure, go ahead.
It's just when that $100,000, are you talking about the internet towers, or is this reference to the landline internal phone system? I'm not clear about that. That's all.
Mr. Mayor, could Ms. Hewitt please provide some clarity through you to Councillor Young?
Thank you, Robin. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Young. This is a replacement for our existing landline system. So there are a number of options, as we discussed when this was presented to council. And until we scope it, we're not clear whether it will be a system that is consistent with what we have now with desk units, or whether there will be other options, because there are a variety of different options available to us. But we need to scope it first, and then we would bring back that report with the analysis and the recommended type of system, and that will drive the actual budget expenditures.
If I may, just
supplementary.
Supplementary, thank you. Yeah, just that when Councillor Clark indicated the cutout, I assumed that he was talking about cell phones, and given the topography of Oro-Medonte, where you have your valleys and hills and that sort of thing, it is a problem, as we all know, here in Oro-Medonte. So, okay, that explains it. Thank you very much, Jack.
Thank you. Any other questions regarding the telephone system item? No? Okay, please, can we move to the next slide?
Mr. Mayor, just for clarity on the deferred projects, there was some discussion. There's comfort with council with respect to that process, and the update from Ms. Morrow and Mr. Binns and Mr. Whitlib.
I see none, but Mr. Clark, would you like to?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the floor and staff, if applicable. Is there any way we can get more of a definitive timeline on terms of additional research regarding potential community support? And the reason why I ask that is because I think we've had these funds carry forward for a long period of time, and I think there should be a consideration on us spending that money to restore some of our heritage fixtures throughout the township. So under my current understanding of this is there's something that there's going to be coming back to council. Could we get a timeline on when that might be?
Mr. Mayor,
See how done, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To you, through you to Councillor Clark. Mr. Whitlib, again, please. and it's crystal balling, Derek, but the report back that I referred to earlier from committee to council, have you any idea of cycles between now and prior to whenever this year that the Heritage Committee would be in a position to be reporting back? Mr. Whitlib?
Thank you, Robin. Through the mayor to council, I guess my best projection would be this would be certainly a Q2 piece. Just recognizing that the Heritage Committee's inaugural meeting just took place on Monday. Hopefully at the next meeting, they will be next month's meeting, they'll be able to wrap up their work plan, and that would help us better identify timelines and what's within their reach. So optimistically within Q2, but I hesitate to be more precise than that at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Whitlib. No other questions? Then can we please move? You've already moved to the next slide. Or have you? No, there you go. Okay. Operating budget refinements. Any comments or questions? CEO Dunn?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I could start and then just go to Ms. Morrow. We did speak earlier in the first couple of cycles of presentations about an added 1% towards the legal contingency, and that is there. And then the allocations in planning and in shared costs. Ms. Morrow, the 100 for tribunal matters and general litigation.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn. Through you, Mr. Mayor. As a staff, we deliberated on the original suggested budget, and we looked at trends from past years. Myself and Derek from planning also reviewed some of the trends, even on a revenue standpoint, to make sure that we could balance the budget in planning. And through that deliberation with Derek, we were able to get the 100,000 reduced from planning, just based on historical trends of land tribunal arbitration and revenue.
Thank you, Ms. Morrow. I think it's no surprise to everybody, last year was a very active tribunal year for this township, and it comes at quite a high expense. And this was a step that needed to be taken in order to ensure that we have the funds, because we are still not fully out from the tribunals we were under last year, and it didn't make sense to budget the norm $100,000 to $150,000, knowing that we were going to far exceed that. So we need to prepare ourselves for the future and what makes us most sustainable moving forward. Deputy Mayor Lavoie.
Yeah, I think just to add to that commentary, there are a number of issues that are still pending, and many of them are legal cases that are leaves to appeal and appeals of the leaves to appeal. So there is sufficient layering now in the legal matters that we're dealing with. And furthermore, there are residents who are asking for protection and for the township to protect them and their quality of life in the township. And we want this budget to be reflective of that interest. And also, I think looking forward, we have a official plan that is yet to be approved either by the county or by the province. We're not sure whom might do that, and we can anticipate that official plan will likely trigger additional OLT appeals. So we're moving forward with what we believe to be the most prudent way in order to protect our residents, and also looking to what the potential for litigation might be. And once again, it is a budget, so it may or may not be spent, but we want to be honest, fair, reflective, and representative in terms of what we're putting forth to the public. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Lavoie. Councillor Young.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Greenlaw. This matter may be discussed at a later date, but I'm always curious why the cost of certain litigation is not indicated to council here. We have no idea what certain cases cost. And it's important that we know that a prior case costs this much. Why that those costs are not provided to council. Further, I believe that the costs of council on a quarterly basis are redacted from the public, and certainly it is their money. They need to know exactly how much of their tax money is going to defend cases or proceed with cases. Perhaps this is a question for CAO Dunn as to why council is unaware of the cost of certain cases other than estimates by A and B. And again, why those costs, legal costs, are kept from the public.
I believe we are addressing that issue moving forward. We can't change the past, but CAO Dunn, would you like to further comment on that?
Absolutely, Mr. Mayor. If I could unpack Councillor Young's queries, Part A and Part B. Part A, with respect to the update to council, staff are in the final stages of preparing a comprehensive update for council. It is in closed session, and it will be a file update with corresponding financial numbers associated with the files. Certainly through discussions over the first quarter, Mr. Mayor, is clear a desire to be able to report out with some greater clarity on expenditures, and that's part of the plan, both a closed session update, Part A, identifying files and specific costs, and B, a report out in open session that would provide a little more clarity to what Councillor Young was referring to regarding the price of specific projects. I hope that provides some. It is forthcoming. Yeah, I believe Ms. Hewitt is targeting, I know it's a work in process, I believe it's targeting for April the 12th. I could be wrong, Mr. Mayor. Donna, am I correct? I'm going from memory.
Thank you, Robin. Through the mayor to council, we are working on pulling those numbers out of the system. We do need an opportunity to have review by the CFO on the financial analysis that we're providing.
So if not the 12th, the 26th.
Okay, yes, a supplemental, and then to Councillor Hutchison.
Thank you, Mayor. We all ran, and I know what everybody's expecting me to say, we all ran on a campaign of transparency and openness and accountability, and I think that providing those numbers to us as a council and certainly to the public as well is somewhat, I guess, fulfilling a campaign statement by all of us, and I think it's important that the public do know exactly what things are costing us here at council, costing them, I should say.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Young, for your comments. And just to kind of close that part of it, governance is not a light switch. You know, I know a lot of people ran on similar things, but at the end of the day, it takes time to transition from where we were into where we want to go, and it's an ongoing thing. It's not something that will be ever completed, because we got to modify ourselves as the world evolves and changes. But thank you for your comments and concerns, and thank you, Mr. Dunn, for clarifying. Councillor Hutchinson.
Thank you, Mayor Greenlaw, through you to CAO Dunn. When we do this roll up, will it also include the costs of IC investigations?
Councillor, that is a separate matter, but I believe there's there is a line associated with that. I can't remember if it's in the draft report. As Donna indicated, it's a work in process. I can't remember specifically. Donna, is that broken out in that? I realize it's a work in process. I can't recall.
Through you to council, typically we haven't included the Integrity Commissioner costs as part of the legal reporting that we do. That said, there's nothing to say that we can't do it, and traditionally we have provided those reports in a separate reporting to council, but they can be combined if that's the wish of council.
Supplementary.
Through you, Mayor Greenlaw. Donna, thank you very much. I, for one, would like to see that broken out and available to view. Thank you.
Thank you. Donna, did you get Councillor Hutchison's reply?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, just for clarity, Councillor Hutchison, are you suggesting it as part of the legal report, but as a separate item or as a separate report?
I would say part of the legal report as a separate item, whatever would be less work for you, Donna. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Understood.
Okay. Is there any other questions? You know, in regards to the IC, the one thing I'll say is quite often communication helps us avoid filing complaints to the IC. So I would encourage, whether it's the public or council, like, communicate, reach out, and discussion quite often can avoid incremental costs being put on, because as soon as a complaint goes in and they initiate a follow-up, it's on the taxpayer and the township's dime. So, Councillor or Deputy Mayor Lavoie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to add to your comment in particular, I think it's also wise for council members to seek the advice of the IC, just to avoid a circumstance where it might be required to have an investigation. So that can also be seen as an investment in ensuring that we don't increase those costs. So for all of us, and I know some of us have availed themselves of that, and that's fine. It's a private matter, and thank you very much. I agree with you,
That's
Mr.
a
Mayor.
very good point. It's a lot less expensive to inquire with the IC as to getting advice than to pay the repercussions of making the wrong decision. Councillor Young.
Yeah, just further to Deputy Mayor Lavoie and yourself. Just further to Deputy Mayor Lavoie's comments there, and yours as well, Mayor. What the IC stressed during the meeting yesterday was informal resolutions. I think that people should be made aware out there that have any idea of furthering a complaint, to consider that option as opposed to simply going directly to the IC, that approach, or at least consider informal resolutions. And again, as the mayor has said, it'll save bucks, it'll save money for all of us.
Thank you. Any further questions on legal costs? If not, could we please move to the next slide? Environmental initiatives. Any comments or questions in this concern? Councillor Bard?
Just looking at that increase year over year, it's very close to 3%, and that's quite reasonable for the operating costs compared to most of the departments that we've seen on there. And I think we're going to need the environmental groups much more as we move forward for consultation with whatever's going to happen with Bill 23.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hutchison.
I concur with Councillor Bard. In fact, the SSCA provided us just recently with a very good report on Bass Lake and the health of Bass Lake, and it was, I think, a great example of the type of work that they're doing for us and going to be necessary going forward.
Councillor Lavoie, or Deputy Mayor Lavoie, my apologies.
That's fine. Thank you. Either is good. Yeah, and I think it's reasonable to say, and perhaps I'll ask CAO Dunn to comment on this, but this is probably an area that we least understand going forward as a budget component, because we don't understand what components will be downloaded from the province, or how we will address them. So, you know, this might be a big area of budget reconciliation and resetting for the new year in 2024.
CAO Dunn.
Mr. Mayor, through you to the deputy, and Deputy, you read my notes as the discussion was taking place, because Mr. Whitlib and I have had some initial discussions with our partners on this. They do not know all the inputs, and certainly members of council heard from Derek during the budget presentations, the impact on us from a corporate perspective. So this right now is still a very big unknown. I don't know if we're going to hear something soon with additional clarity or not, but certainly there's an awful lot of work for Mr. Whitlib, for development services personnel, and working with our partners, the conservation authorities and the association. I'm not sure if Mr. Whitlib wanted to add any other commentary on that, Mr. Mayor, if I could go to Derek.
Yes, please, Derek.
Thank you, Robin, through the mayor to council. You heard through the budget presentations, and these organizations, and particularly SSEA, it's a small organization. It's a fairly lean organization, and in terms of the outputs it provides to the community, I think there's tremendous value there. With the Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority, the largest of these three environmental initiatives, one piece to keep in mind that regardless of what happens with Bill 23, the LSRCA is still responsible for implementation of many pieces of the Lake Simcoe Protection Plan. So even with changes to their role within the planning review scope, there's still a big component. They will still play in planning review as it relates to the Lake Simcoe Protection Plan. So where I'm going with this is potentially the agency that might be most impacted might be the Nottawasaga Valley Conservation Authority, but as the CAO has already indicated, the particulars of that are yet to be determined by those agencies themselves, and be speculative on our part to try and crystal ball those at this point, recognizing though, that perhaps 2024, maybe we be adjusting. Those are my comments at this time.
Thank you very much, Derek. And back all, like everyone's points, all intermingle or intertwine, but as Councillor Bard said, this is a big issue that we don't know much about. We need to be proactive. We need to get it right, because reversing something like this is very, very expensive, if not impossible. So it is important we get it right and give it the proper attention and consideration. Thank you. Any other questions? None at this time. So can we move to the next slide, please? So Councillor Schell has stepped back from the table for this discussion. But any questions or comments as the Oro Chamber of Commerce and Tourism? Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to maybe Mr. Binns. Have we gotten the appropriate documentation about the event they want to host and the required information?
Through to Councillor Clark, I've yet to receive the operations plan. I did speak to the executive director the other day, and I think they were waiting on a decision from council in terms of further advertising the event, so that the logistics haven't been fully sorted out, and we do require that to look at even what is permitted to occur in the building, and then obviously the feasibility of what they're planning versus some of the logistics in the facility.
Supplemental.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Binns. So and this is maybe just a procedural question, so is there a chance that we could say yes to the $1,500 to support the job fair, but they're unable to provide the appropriate documentation to actually host the event?
There's definitely a chance that could happen, and it would certainly be subject to the requirements of the special event bylaw and those existing policies that we've identified to the organizer at the onset. I think the next part of the discussion needs to be the timely submittal of those components. Typically, those are submitted and approved before the event is advertised, because we don't want to get into a situation of, at the last minute having to cancel an event because the logistics haven't been sorted out. So I am a little bit concerned about that.
Any further questions? Yeah, please continue.
This is maybe through you, thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to the floor. I mean, I think this makes sense in theory to host a job fair at the township facilities. I'm not opposed to that. I just want to make sure that our staff has the appropriate time and consideration in order to make sure this event is actually a success. So I have, I'm supportive of it, but we just got to make sure that we're going to get there.
Okay, I think basically what you're asking is if they don't fulfill the commitments or the requirements by staff, then the event would not take place. And if the event did not take place, then the funds would not be released because it's in kind. Okay.
And Mr. Mayor, just for clarity, it's not staff's requirements, it's the policy and the process that's in place to ensure protection and a safe operation of an event.
Yes, no, that's understood. And I know staff is working diligently to make sure that they can work with them to provide the proper, please go ahead, sorry, the proper documentation. Councillor Hutchison.
Through you, Mayor Greenlaw, do we know what the date is for the job fair? That's been advertised? Is it the month of April?
Through to Councillor Hutchison, I believe it's the end of April. I don't know the exact date. I think it's the last weekend in April. I can double check that.
Okay, and sorry, supplementary through you,
Please,
Mayor
continue.
Greenlaw, to Mr. Binns. In all fairness to your staff, what would the required timeline be for everything to be submitted in order not to put undue pressure on your staff to make a decision?
Ideally, we would have liked to have received the information in advance. I think, from a staff perspective, probably a week would be reasonable to get that back. As I've stated previously, we have been requesting that for some time now. But I think at the same time, there's a shared interest in ensuring that the event would be a success. So that event plan should really have a minimum level of participation. So I think there'd have to be some break-even points, like assuming that's part of the business plan for this. And I don't know exactly now how many businesses may have signed up or what that looks like, but that's obviously part of the logistics as well.
My understanding is the job fairs, they've got a waiting list, and I think if a quick follow up now that they've got their AGM behind them, I think they've had a lot on their plate, and they will do their very best to make sure that they fulfill the requested information in a timely manner. Any other comments or questions regarding this item? Seeing none, please move to the next slide. Capital and operating budget refinements, fleet equipment. Oh, just give, yes, please, could we bring Councillor Schell back in?
That didn't take long. No, that was easy.
This is definitely a big ticket item on the budget. So, Councillor or CAO Dunn, I know you want to be a councillor. We'll get you a form for 3.5 years from now.
I may pass on that, Mr. Mayor. So if I could, this was purposeful to double down on the life cycle schedule that is currently in place for vehicle replacement that is funded out of reserve. The budget that was presented to you and the reserve schedule showed how we were dealing with replacements. That in accordance with our procurement bylaw and the authority of staff, we're required to go to you with tender awards, which we did. There was a package that went on the 22nd recommending both replacement and a new piece of equipment, contingent on endorsement and ratification of the budget. And finally, bundling this all together is perhaps a revised life cycle policy, perhaps additional amendments to how we're dealing with fleet and equipment, but there would be a business case coming out of a fleet review, an opportunity for weigh-in and direction from council, and bundled in that business case is the plan that Mr. Binns identified regarding looking at offsetting some of the work from third-party sources and bringing that in-house. But Mr. Mayor, all of the latter part of those expenses that are identified in 24 are predicated on one, completion of that business case analysis and an updated policy, and two, direction and endorsement by council. So those things, both on the staffing side and on the equipment side identified in 24, are contingent on council review and endorsement of that fleet study. And certainly council will see throughout the rest of 23 pieces of fleet and equipment coming forward to council in accordance with our current life cycle and current fleet and equipment replacement programs being funded out of reserves. And those decision points will come to council with a report for your weigh-in and determination on the award.
Thank you for those comments. I think I do commend during budget discussions the information provided by Mr. Binns and his department, and the need for us to modernize our fleet management program. And I will call upon a colleague to comment because he was heavily engaged in the process. Councillor Clark, would you like to kind of bring us up to speed about fleet management and the importance of it in this day and age?
Certainly, Mr. Mayor. Thank you through you to the floor and to folks at home. Fleet management is something that is much better done when it's done on a proactive basis. So the steps that Sean and his team are taking are going to get us from where we are here to here in terms of reduction of downtime, the levels of service that we're able to consistently perform, making sure that our equipment is able to last to the stated life cycles, and whether or not we need to change those to be more reflective of the current conditions. Because what you want to avoid is you want to avoid having 12-year-old vehicles that are going to need significant restoration and dollars thrown at them to last for the remaining 2 years. It's okay to spend the $12,000 on a 2-year-old vehicle because they're going to still last you those remaining 12 years. But if you're spending those funds on a 12-year-old vehicle, you may not get that return on investment. So it's really, really important. And I, for one, am very excited to see the progress that we make. Not necessarily immediately today, but from a long-term township perspective, this is hugely beneficial.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. As soon as you speak, then everyone's got their card up. CAO Dunn.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, Councillor Clark, in my discussions with Mr. Binns and Chief Murray, who are the individuals that have the majority of our rolling stock, certainly this is a corporate undertaking, and Mr. Binns has an enormous stake in refining this, as does the chief. The costs and life cycle of fire equipment and rolling apparatus is another huge factor in this process. So it's really important to be able to get that life cycle right, so that we're not spending money on a piece of equipment and the chief has another layer of compliance. Once a piece of equipment hits a certain age, it's no longer certified to be able to be a fire apparatus as well. So very, very important piece of work for 2023 for the corporation. And the last thing that I would say, Mr. Mayor, I don't believe I'm getting ahead of the process. Mr. Binns and Chief Murray have used a model like this before, and the model I'm referring to is effectively a steering committee, perhaps with a representative from council, multiple cross-functional groups, obviously operations and fire, but perhaps representation on that steering committee from council as well.
Thank you. And I think the other challenge that's been thrown at them since COVID is why fleet management is so important is because delivery time of vehicles now. It's not like the old days when you would, I shouldn't use the word old, the previous days when you could walk onto a dealership lot and purchase one of 15 that are sitting there, right? So anyways, thank you for educating us, David, and Mr. Binns, thank you for taking the initiative and moving this item forward and modernizing our fleet management system. Councillor Lavoie, did you have a comment?
Yeah, just a quick one. I think having been involved in heavy industrial equipment maintenance programs, I can tell you that run to failure is no way to operate. It's going to cost you a lot of money, and it's going to keep a lot of equipment off the road, and it's going to make a lot of people very unhappy, and the road's quite unsafe. So I fully endorse all of the comments that I hear here today. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments? Seeing none, could we have the next slide, please? Well, this is the big conclusion.
So, Mr. Mayor, I believe it is the conclusion, but I've heard concurrence on each one of those suggested refinements that Ms. Morrow laid out, both on the operating side and the capital side. A number of those things both recommended to be deferred, as well as additional information to come before council. So Ms. Morrow has developed a 2-year plan with an overall tax impact of 4.5. Nellie, that's $202.31 on an assessed home at 500. That 202 is in $23. It may be different in 24, but the overall 4.5% tax increase. Nellie, I'll turn it over to you because there's a caveat there based on what happens in 24. And there is a budget recap, a budget reconciliation process that would be happening early in January, I'm assuming, of 2024.
Ms. Morrow?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Dunn, and through you, Mr. Mayor. Basically, I just wanted to start with the next steps, and hopefully after today, once you'll be ratifying this budget, we hope. And just to let you know, the next steps will be that, of course, we will be coming to council with updates on actual to budget to show you where we're tracking on those budget items that we've shown to you in the last couple of weeks. We also will be coming to you with some investment strategies, now knowing what we will need to fund our projects moving forward in the next 2 years. We can come to you with an investment strategy and explain where our funds, our reserve funds, are sitting right now. I just wanted to also mention there's going to be some major discussions regarding user fees, which may change some of the revenues that we're currently tracking in our budgets. We have our DC study that will affect potentially the reserve funds as well, asset management, and that's just to name a few of the things that we'll be working on that could affect the budget. And as Mr. Dunn mentioned, there is a process where we go through ratification of the budget, and that would include showing you, based on trends and based on all these factors that may change what we've presented today, that we could, that rate could change what we're going to be charging our residents in 2024. So, and we do actually have a ratification we will have an update before the, when we do our final bills, which is around June, we do a tax rate bylaw, which also gives you an update on what those tax rates will be.
Thank you very much. Any comments at this time before I make my final comments? Oh, there we go. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Nelly. I just wanted to clarify. I think you said earlier when we were discussing the first item, the $1.6 million in roads, that we had an increase in funding from the OCIF. Can you just elaborate for me when exactly we found out we were getting those additional funds?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Well, each year we're required to report to the ministry on what we use those OCIF funds for. So through that process, that is when we report to them what we've used our funds for. That is when they do a calculation to determine what our next year's funding will be. So we really only found out recently, I'm going to say in the last less than 2 weeks ago, what those funds, what that calculation will be for 2023. And through that process, we also determined that there was some carry forward reserves that we could use towards 2023 projects.
Supplemental?
And this is maybe more of a comment. So I think in my summation, a large portion of the decrease from what was originally suggested to council of 5.34 blended rate at the beginning, a decent portion of that is the increased funding that we've actually received from the OCIF.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I mean, it is a combination of many things, to be quite honest, but there is the component of the dedicated debt as well that was part of that change. The insurance, again, yes, additional funding that we found from OCIF was a component of that as well.
Thank you. Any other? Deputy Mayor Lavoie?
Yeah, I just wanted to extend my sincere gratitude to staff and other members of council for the work that has transpired over the last period of time, not just more recently for us, but certainly over a much more extended period of time for staff. I think it's what's represented here is a very responsible response to our requests on behalf of staff, and also for their education that they were able to provide us with in terms of how a municipal budget is put together and its pieces, parts, investments, debts, and cash flow. So and funding. So once again, thank you to all of staff for that, and to council for their contribution.
Thank you. I echo what Councillor Lavoie said. And I want to commend this council for pushing, you know, in a responsible and respectful way, staff who have educated everybody immensely over the past month. We could have come in lower, but it wouldn't have been sustainable. We would have had more significant increases down the road. So this was a respectfully, well thought through budget. You know, we could have come in much higher, but we made cuts where we felt was best respectful without damaging the services that this township provides to its residents. So I want to thank everybody, especially the staff, because the staff, we pushed them and they came back with very respectfully and answered every question we asked them. So thank you. Madam Clerk, is there, oh no, CEO Dunn, would you like to make a comment?
Mr. Mayor, my last one of the day, and there is a resolution that the clerk will put on the floor to clarify the 4.5% overall for 23 and 24. It is a learning process for all of us, Mr. Mayor. There is additional material that needs to come back to council You're going to ratify the budget today. Ms. Morrow is about to shift from budget to audit. And there is a set of reports that have to come back. Nellie, it's most likely the 26th of April, if I've got the right meeting date, that you would see additional documentation that would then be the culmination of this ratification, updated materials that would be able to go on the website, and the other required financial reports from Ms. Morrow.
Well, I think basically, Robin, what you're saying is there's been a lot of work done to get us to where we are, but there's a lot of work still to do. So, you know, and understood. So, Madam Clerk, would you like to read the motion, please?
Mr. Mayor, if I could just have a moment to clarify with the Chief Financial Officer and the CAO the order that they want.
Would you want like 5 minutes?
If council would like to have 5 minutes.
We'll take
I'll need one of those 5.
5 minutes, and
Okay.
then that way, that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay.
So we'll take a 5-minute break.
Mr. Mayor, we're live.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Madam Clerk, may we have a motion for item 5A, please?
Moved by Bard, seconded by Lavoie. Be it resolved that 2023-2024 capital and operating budget refinements presented by Nellie Morrow, Director of Finance, Chief Financial Officer, re 2023-2024 capital and operating budget refinements be received and adopted.
All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. May we have confirmation bylaw motion?
No, Your Worship, there's a second part to.
My apologies.
Moved by Shell, seconded by Clark. Be it resolved that the 2023-2024 operating and capital budgets as amended, effective March 29th, 2023, be received and adopted to achieve an overall tax increase for 2023 of 4.5% and reflect a 4.5% tax increase in 2024, pending the 2024 County of Simcoe and school boards increases.
All in favor? Carried. May we have a confirmation bylaw, please?
Moved by Clark, seconded by Bard. Be it resolved that bylaw number 2023-023, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the special council meeting held on Wednesday, March 29th, 2023, be read a first, second, and third time, passed, being engrossed by the clerk, signed and sealed by the mayor.
All in favor? That's carried. And may we have a motion to adjourn, please, Madam Clerk?
Moved by Shell, seconded by Lavoie. Be it resolved that we do now adjourn at 3:05 p.m.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Oh, my apologies. CAO Dunn?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to say thank you to council as we went through this process together, but a huge thanks to Ms. Morrow. This is Ms. Morrow's first budget as the Chief Financial Officer at Oro-Medonte. Ms. Morrow and my colleagues started this around Labor Day, so it has certainly been a fairly significant lift. Thank you to every one of my colleagues and to Nellie for a successful 23-24 operating and capital budget. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, members of council, for all your comments of support as well.
Thank you, CAO Dunn. And as I would say, back at you. And Nellie, on behalf of all of council, thank you for all the effort and time you've put into this. That said, thank you everyone for live streaming in on this or watching this tonight's meeting, and have a great week.